Today we're heading into a place often called paradise on Earth, Kashmir. You just picture those serene valleys, huge snow-covered mountains, rivers clear as crystal, fed by these ancient glaciers, vibrant meadows too.
Absolutely stunning. And for generations, it really has been this sanctuary, this beautiful place whose rhythms, sustained communities for centuries.
And this is the core of it. Beneath that beautiful surface, there's a quiet crisis brewing.
Undeniably, the whole rhythm of Kashmir's season, something that was so predictable, it's just unraveling.
Right.
We're seeing these really alarming signs. People talk about the valley like literally boiling. Its glaciers, the source of so much life, they're shrinking incredibly fast.
Leaving people facing a future that feels, well, increasingly uncertain.
Exactly.
And that's really our mission today. In this deep dive, we want to pull out the crucial details of this climate crisis in Kashmir. We've gathered sources, and the goal is to get you, the listener, quickly up to speed.
Yeah, share the important insights, reveal some, frankly, surprising facts, and connect the dots so you don't just grasp what's happening, but, why it matters so profoundly for a place like Kashmir.
Okay, so let's jump in. Let's unpack the climate itself. To really get a handle on Kashmir's situation, we kind of need to see it in the bigger picture, the global climate trends. I mean, we all heard 2024 was declared the hottest year on record globally. The planet actually went past 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. That's the backdrop.
It is, and that global trend, it hits hard locally with some really extreme impacts right there in Kashmir.
Like what specifically?
Well, you see it directly on the ground. Srinagar, the heart of the valley, was sweltering, hit a record 36.8 degrees Celsius in July 2024. Residents, tourists, everyone felt that.
Wow, 36.8 C. That's intense for Srinagar.
It really is. And then, flip that coin. Look at winter 2024. Astonishingly dry. January 2024 was one of the warmest and driest in over 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah, the precipitation shortfall was nearly 80% in late 2023. Just very little snow or rain when they needed it most.
So those are like snapshots, right?
Yeah.
But the long-term data, that must paint an even clearer picture.
Oh, absolutely. And it's pretty troubling. The meteorological records from places across the valley, Srinagar, Gulmarg, Pahalgam.
The main spots.
Exactly. They show this persistent pattern over the last 40 years, maximum temperatures, up by about 0.04 degrees Celsius per year. Minimum temperatures creeping up by 0.025 degrees Celsius annually.
Now those numbers, 0.04, 0.025, they sound tiny on their own, almost like nothing, right?
They do sound small year by year, but that steady creep, that fraction of a degree piling up year after year, it has completely, unraveled centuries of these predictable cycles.
How so? Can you give an example?
Okay, so winter warming is particularly stark. Temperatures climbed 2.7 degrees Celsius between 1960 and 2005 compared to the historical averages.
2.7 degrees warmer in winter.
Yeah. And spring warmed by 1.2 degrees Celsius in that same period. So what does that mean? It means things like apple trees budding weeks earlier than they should.
Okay.
Then they get hit by a sudden frost, which can be devastating for the crop. It's these kinds of subtle shifts causing these big cascading failures in a system that really relied on, precision timing.
And then that ripples across everything, agriculture, water systems, the biodiversity.
Exactly.
Which leads us straight to water.
Yeah.
Because water in Kashmir isn't just a resource, it's the lifeline.
It truly is. The valley depends critically on two main things for water. Those winter storms called western disturbances that bring snow all the way from the Mediterranean.
Right, the crucial snowfall.
And then the Indian summer monsoon for summer rains. But the recent data shows this deeply troubling shift in those patterns.
Okay, what kind of shift?
Well, interestingly, the overall annual precipitation has actually edged up slightly by maybe 0.5 millimeter per year. But, and this is the key part, the vital winter snowfall.
The snow that feeds the rivers and springs.
Precisely. That has plummeted. Just look at the 2024-25 winter. A 35% rainfall deficit in June and July, then a massive 75% shortfall in October.
75% less rain in October. That's huge.
It is. And what really hits home for people locally is the Chilai Kalan. That's the 40-day period of intense cold, traditionally known for heavy snow.
Right, a cultural marker almost.
Exactly. But now, it's increasingly snowless. It's becoming this symbol of loss. We've had 10 such snowless Chilai Kalans in the past 30 years. 4 in just the last 10 years alone.
4 in the last decade.
Yeah, and that immediately threatens water security for millions of people.
And it's not just about less snow falling, is it? It's about the source of the water itself. The glaciers.
Ah, the glaciers, the lifeblood of Kashmir's rivers. They are melting at an alarming rate, almost hard to grasp.
How alarming. What do the studies show?
Well, studies from 2024 indicate that nearly 96% of Kashmir's glaciers are receding.
86%. That's almost all of them.
Pretty much. And when you look at specific examples like the Nuncun glaciers in the northwestern Himalayas, they lost 4.8% of their area just between 2000 and 2020.
Okay.
And their snouts, the endpoints, retreated by 6.8 meters every year on average during that time.
6.8 meters a year. Wow.
And then there's the Kolahoy Glacier. It's a critical source for the Talim River. Its stream flows have dwindled significantly really since the 1970s.
So those retreat rates for glaciers like Nuncun and Kolahoy, does that put them on a truly irreversible path? I mean, could that trajectory possibly change?
That is the critical question, isn't it? The projections, they're dire under the high emission scenarios, the ones where we don't cut global emissions drastically.
The path we're kind of on now?
Sadly, yes. Under those scenarios, Kashmir's glaciers could lose 80 to 90% of their mass by the year 2100.
80 and 90% gone.
Gone. It jeopardizes water security for millions. And honestly, given the current trends, it's becoming really hard to see how that reverses without dramatic, immediate global action on emissions.
And the heartbreaking thing is seeing these impacts already, right now on the ground.
Exactly. It's not just abstract projections. Picture this. Early 2025, there's this revered stream in Kolgam. Over a dozen villages rely on it.
Okay.
During its annual festival, a time when it always flows. It just didn't. It failed to flow. First time anyone can remember.
That must have been shocking for people.
Deeply. And it's not just one stream. We're hearing stories from all over the valley, Anak, Baramulla, about springs just drying up.
Forcing people to go further for water.
Yeah, forcing villagers to trek miles for water, completely changing their daily lives. In February 2025, a historic spring in Pulwama just ran dry, and the Chellam River itself, the main river, hit a 62-year low in 2024.
62-year low. What's really striking here is how these big macro-level statistics we're talking about, glacier melt, rainfall deficits, translate into these minute-by-minute realities for people. It's fundamentally reshaping daily life.
Absolutely, and you see it with the lakes, too, the iconic Dal Lake. It's lost over 80% of its original area. Now, that's due to a mix of climate impacts and human encroachment, too, to be fair.
Right. Complex causes.
But climate is a huge factor, and Wooler Lake, another vital wetland, its capacity has basically halved since the early 20th century.
Halved. Okay, so these environmental shifts, they must be hitting the economy hard, especially agriculture and horticulture, which are the backbone there.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge pressure point. Take apples, for instance. Apples are just... they're part of Kashmiri identity, let alone the economy.
The cornerstone.
Totally. But the warmer temperatures, the erratic rains, they've thrown the whole cropping cycle into chaos. Orchards are blooming earlier, fruiting earlier.
Which sounds okay, but isn't?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it leads to smaller apples, lower quality yields, and then they're vulnerable to those sudden late frosts we talked about.
Right.
In 2024, growers in Shopian, a major apple area, reported a 40% drop in production. 40%.
Wow. Because of dry spells and pests?
Yeah, prolonged dry spells and also pest surges, which are often triggered by the warmer, milder winters that don't kill off the pests.
So it's not just the famous apples. Even saffron, the valley's super prized, expensive crop.
Yeah.
It's struggling too.
It is. Similar challenges. The dry autumns have slashed saffron yields, and data from 2024 shows a really marked increase in drought frequency, going way back to the late 19th century. But accelerating now.
So how are farmers actually coping with all this? You hear about adaptation, but are these changes sustainable long-term? Or are they more like temporary fixes?
That really is the heart of the challenge. You do see a lot of adaptation happening. Farmers shifting from crops that need tons of water, like paddy rice, towards horticulture, like apples or other fruit, which can sometimes bring better returns.
Okay, that makes sense.
But frankly, a lot of these efforts are turning out to be just stopgaps. They're reactive, not really adapting to the scale of the change that's coming. Staple crops like rice and maize are also suffering from water scarcity and heat, cutting harvests.
And there's more, isn't there? Like soil erosion.
Yes, exactly. That's another layer. The heavy rainfall events, when they do happen, combined sometimes with unsustainable farming practices, lead to increased soil erosion, which of course further threatens future productivity.
And the weight of all these changes, it falls heaviest on the rural communities, doesn't it?
Disproportionately so. Women and children particularly bear a huge brunt. They're often the ones spending hours fetching water from sources that are getting further and further away.
Increasing their physical work, their emotional burden.
Immensely. And it's not just water for drinking or farming. Think about electricity. Hydropower plants supply a lot of the valley's power.
Right. Needs consistent river flow.
Which they're not getting. Inconsistent river flows mean the hydropower plants falter, leading to more power outages. It just compounds the difficulties.
So we've got the heat, the water scarcity. But it's also about the extremes getting more extreme, right? Kashmir's used to intense weather, but climate change is sort of juicing it up.
That's a good way to put it. It's intensifying these events, making them more frequent, more destructive. Take heat waves.
Which you said were unheard of before.
Pretty much unheard of in the valley. Now, they're becoming routine. May 2024, Srinagar hit a scorching 35.6 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
It actually prompted the government to start drafting its very first heatwave action plan. And the health impacts are visible skin conditions, heat-related illnesses. They spiked in 2024.
And on the flip side, the rain.
When it comes, it can be devastating. There was a 2024 analysis that linked the catastrophic floods back in 2014 directly to intensified atmospheric moisture flows, basically. More water vapor in the air due to warming.
A direct climate change link.
Yes. And sadly, that pattern repeated, maybe on a smaller scale, but in frequent flash floods during 2024 as well.
And those warmer winters you mentioned, they have another consequence too, right? Avalanches?
Exactly. Warmer winters mean less stable snowpacks. That's leading to a surge in avalanches, often deadly ones. We saw incidents in places like Sonamarg and Gulmarg in 2024.
Which also hits tourism, a key part of the economy.
It does. Claims lives, disrupts communities, and hits tourism hard. So you have this erratic swing, extreme heat, then intense floods, then avalanches. It's putting immense strain on Kashmir's unique biodiversity, too. It's all connected.
A true ripple effect.
Indeed. Kashmir's ecosystems are incredibly rich, but they're buckling under this pressure. Think about the alpine meadows, the wetlands, home to unique plants and animals. They're losing their delicate balance.
Specific examples.
A 2024 study actually warned that rising temperatures could push many native plant species towards extinction.
Wow.
Even iconic animals like the Himalayan brown bear, already endangered, it's facing disrupted hibernation cycles because the winters just aren't reliably cold enough anymore.
And the wetlands like Dal Lake.
They're warming up. You get more algal blooms, which choke out aquatic life. It also threatens the migratory birds that rely on those wetlands.
Yeah.
It really brings up this crucial point about the vulnerability of Kashmir's frozen water systems, what scientists call the cryosphere.
The cryosphere. Glaciers, snowpack, frozen ground.
Exactly. And the whole Hindu Kush Himalayan region where Kashmir sits is warming about 0.4 degrees Celsius faster than the global average.
Faster than average.
Yeah, which means less snow cover overall, and it destabilizes slopes. This increases the risk of landslides and floods, which further endangers ecosystems and communities. It's this dangerous feedback loop.
It's a cascading problem.
So you can really see how climate change is fundamentally reshaping daily life in Kashmir. It touches almost every single aspect.
Yeah.
There was a survey in 2024 found that an astounding 80% of residents, 8 out of 10 people, have personally noticed the declining snowfall and water availability.
And they see it directly impacting their livelihoods, their routines.
Absolutely. You hear farmers describing this sense of, well, helplessness sometimes. Pastoralists, the shepherds, report their grazing lands shrinking. Fishers note declining catches because the lakes are warming.
And beyond the economics, the physical challenges, what about the mental toll?
It's significant. Mental health is suffering. You hear young Kashmiris expressing real fear, profound fear for their homeland's future. And women, as we mentioned, often tasked with fetching water, managing households. They face these growing physical and emotional burdens as resources become scarcer and life gets harder.
It paints a really challenging picture. But amidst all this, is there resilience? Are people finding ways to cope, to fight back?
Yes, absolutely. Amidst these huge challenges, there is this powerful sense of resilience shining through. You see communities actively experimenting.
Like with drought-resistant crops?
Exactly. Drought-resistant crops, different water-saving techniques. People are trying things, actively trying to adapt to this new, difficult reality on the ground.
And is there official recognition? What about the government?
Yes, the Jammu and Kashmir government has officially recognized the crisis. They released a climate action plan in 2024.
Okay, what does it focus on?
It focuses on key areas. Water conservation, trying to promote sustainable agriculture, and restoring damaged ecosystems. And you hear local voices calling for very practical, tangible support.
Things like,
Things like subsidies for climate-smart seeds, insurance schemes to cover crop losses from extreme weather, more training in modern, water-efficient farming techniques. Real practical help.
so there's local action, government plans,
Yep.
but this is a global problem, right? How does Kashmir fit into that bigger picture?
That's crucial. When you broaden the perspective, the stakes are incredibly high and the injustice is stark. Kashmir contributes very, very little to global greenhouse gas emissions.
A tiny fraction.
Tiny, yet it bears this hugely disproportionate burden of the impacts of climate change. The UN's call in 2025 for aggressive global emission cuts really underscores how urgent international action is, especially for places like Kashmir.
So support from outside is needed.
Definitely. Funding and technology transfers from wealthier nations could make a real difference, bolstering local efforts, things like reforestation projects, better glacier monitoring systems. That kind of support is vital.
Okay, so wrapping this up, Kashmir's story, it feels like one of just profound beauty, grappling with significant loss, but also holding on to persistent hope.
I think that captures it well. The science is sobering, no doubt. Temperatures potentially rising 4 to 8 degrees Celsius by 2100. Glaciers possibly vanishing altogether. It's stark.
It is, yet, as you said, the people there, they're fighting back with ingenuity, with determination.
From community conservation efforts right up to policy reforms, there is a path forward. But, and it's a big but, time is undeniably short.
Kashmir's paradise, that idea of it. It can endure, perhaps, but only if action is taken locally, nationally, and critically, globally to protect it.
Right. The window is closing.
So we leave you, our listener, with this. You've heard how local communities in Kashmir are already adapting, how their government has put a climate action plan in place, alongside these urgent global calls for emission cuts. But given those stark projections, a potential 4 to 8 degrees Celsius temperature rise, glaciers possibly disappearing by 2100, what innovative solutions, maybe ideas inspired by other vulnerable regions around the world, do you think could truly scale up? What could really help protect places like Kashmir from such overwhelming environmental changes? Something to think about.